A quiet, unassuming town of rolling hills and whispering forests, this was where the family had just moved in. What they had hoped was their dream home turned into something so old and creaky and so full of history, that they just fell under its spell. They knew nothing of the house's malevolent presence that would haunt them all the way to their core. All started from the tiny, almost insignificant events. Things moved a little from their places, cold air seemed to come from nowhere, and whispers could be heard down the hallways. Initially, the family attributed everything to the peculiarities of an old house. "It's just the wind," the father would say, sweeping off the strange happenings with his wife and children nervously laughing along. But as the days went into weeks, the disturbances increased. Doors slammed shut with no warning, shadows danced on the walls where no one stood, and an oppressive sense of being watched hung heavy in the air. The youngest child, a curious and imaginative 7-year-old, began speaking to an imaginary friend named Elias. At first, the family thought it was harmless, a figment of childhood creativity. But Elias knew things, terrifying things, that no child could have imagined. One night, cold enough to send shivers through her body, the mother woke up by the humming noise. She followed the humming sound and saw her daughter sitting cross-legged in the living room. The pale moonlight coming through the window lit her face. "Who are you talking to, sweetheart?" she asked her daughter, her voice shaking. The girl slowly turned her head, her eyes wide and unblinking, and whispered, "Elias says he doesn't like you being here." From then on, the air inside the house began to weigh heavier, darker, and oppressive. The family started experiencing vivid nightmares. Each nightmare was disturbingly real, making them wake up drenched in sweat, filled with dread. The most frightening thing about the nightmares, however, was the scratches and bruises that they found on their bodies. These marks could not be explained. The father turned himself to local history for answers. That's what he came across. This house was where a colossal tragedy had been perpetrated decades ago. It was at that house that Elias had dwelled, the recluse rumored to have dabbled in dark rituals and the occult. It ended very violently. However, his spirit seemed to have never escaped. Armed with this disturbing knowledge, the family called in a well-known paranormal investigator. Upon arrival, the investigator felt the oppressive energy within the house. Utilizing specialized equipment, they sensed inexplicable spikes in electromagnetic activity and captured chilling EVP recordings. The investigator's face grew pale as they played back the recordings, faint but unmistakable voices saying, "Get out," and, "You don't belong here." Despite the warnings, the family refused to abandon their home. They believed they could coexist with the spirit, but Elias had other plans. The activity escalated to dangerous levels, objects flew across rooms, lights flickered ominously, and dark apparitions appeared, leaving the family paralyzed with fear. One night, as the family was huddled together in the living room, the walls started breathing, pulsating to an unnatural rhythm. Then suddenly, a deafening roar filled the house, and there stood the shadowy figure of Elias before them, his eyes glowing with malevolence. "Leave," he bellowed, his voice shaking the very foundations of the house. That night broke the family's will. They knew they had to get out of that house, but leaving seemed much easier than it was said. Odd things happened when they were somewhere else, giving them the feeling that the demon had stuck itself to them. The family's attempt to flee the house became a pointless exercise. Wherever they went, Elias's presence trailed them back, as if he belonged to them instead of being attached to the house. It started innocuously enough as strange noises and cold spells in their temporary home, then progressed into full-blown manifestations that kept the family under constant duress. A nightmare-prone mother kept a journal. In it, she recorded every frightening encounter with Elias, piecing together the patterns of his activities. "He's always watching. I see him in reflections in the mirrors, windows, even in the television screen when it's turned off. It feels as if his eyes are penetrating my soul." The family contacted a well-known medium, a woman who had made her name dealing with evil spirits. She entered their home and shuddered. "This is no ordinary spirit," she whispered. "This is a demon, a manipulator that thrives on fear. The medium performed a séance in an attempt to contact the entity to find out why it wanted her. As she fell into a trance, the lights dimmed, and her voice transformed into something deep and guttural. She spoke as Elias, "They're mine. They can't leave. I will consume them." The medium warned the family that this was no residual haunting. Elias was feeding off their fear, growing stronger with each encounter. She suggested they seek the help of an exorcist, someone with the spiritual authority to banish such a powerful entity. Enter Father Marcus, a veteran exorcist who had been working on cases of possession and demonic hauntings across the country. Equipped with faith and years of experience, he readied himself for what he called one of the most challenging cases of his career. Father Marcus started with the blessing of the family and their stuff, a temporary shield in protection. Then he led his family to pray, restating his commitment to their cause of fighting back. But Elias did not give in. When the exorcism began, the house became like a battlefield of chaos. The furniture was thrashed violently, and the walls groaned guttural growls. Shadows crept within the room like living beings while the temperature fell to ice chill. Elias was filling up the air with suffocating dread. As Father Marcus recited the rites of exorcism, Elias fought back with terrifying force. The family screamed as objects flew across the room, narrowly missing them. The youngest child, the one who first communicated with Elias, started convulsing, rolling her eyes back as she screamed in a voice that wasn't hers, "You can't take them from me." Father Marcus stood firm, his voice unwavering in the midst of the chaos. He ordered the demon to leave, saying the name of God with every sentence. The battle raged for hours, with Elias manifesting in increasingly horrifying ways, a figure of pure darkness with glowing red eyes, its presence so heavy it felt as if the air itself was being sucked out of the room. Finally, with one last deafening roar, Elias seemed to dissipate, the oppressive energy in the house lifting for the first time in months. The family collapsed in exhaustion, tears streaming down their faces as they clung to each other. But the win was temporary. For days, a sense of uncertainty began to build in the house, starting from small clues that maybe Elias was still there, lights flicker, voices are heard, an unquiet feeling of watching. According to Father Marcus, after exorcising Elias, the exorcism had weakened it, yet it was still kept alive in part by their fear, the remaining bonding between him and the house. Desperate for a final solution, the family made up their minds to approach the origin of Elias's power. They went back to the historian, who provided them with some ghastly details of the rituals that Elias had performed during his lifetime. He had bonded his spirit to an artifact hidden in the house, a blackened, rune-covered box buried in the basement. The family was told that destroying the box would sever Elias's link to the mortal world. Equipped with these new resolutions and by the historian's guidance, the family readied themselves for the final confrontation against Elias. They collected implements, shovels, torches, and holy articles blessed by Father Marcus. It was time to destroy the burnt, rune-covered box in the basement, but doing it would mean facing Elias at the peak of his strength. The atmosphere was suffocating as they descended into the cold, damp basement. The air was heavy with anticipation, and a faint, sinister whisper echoed through the space, growing louder with every step. It was Elias, taunting them, warning them of the wrath they would unleash. Father Marcus led the way, holding a crucifix tightly. The basement was full of forgotten relics and furniture draped in dusty sheets, casting eerie shadows with the flickering flashlight beams. In the far corner, the dirt floor had been disturbed. This was the spot. The family started digging, their shovels hitting the compacted soil. The whispers grew louder and began to sound like guttural growls that shook through the walls. The youngest child screamed, pointing to a dark figure forming in the corner. It was Elias, watching, waiting. Father Marcus advanced to chant prayers in Latin, trying to keep the demon at bay, and the ground gave way below, revealing the box of blackened, engraved runes seemingly pulsing with faint but malevolent energy. The air grew icy, and lights shuddered wildly. The moment they touched the box, the whole house just went wild. Doors slammed, windows broke, and some unearthly roar shook the very foundations of the place. Elias was no longer a shadow, he stood before them as a tall, grotesque figure with red eyes aglow, exuding pure malice. Father Marcus shouted above the chaos, commanding the family to stay together and keep faith. "Do not show fear," he bellowed, clutching the crucifix. Elias lunged at them, but the exorcist's prayers created a barrier, holding the demon at bay. The family hastened their axe to demolish the box. The father swung his hammer around, smashing the lid so that everything inside would fall through, an ancient entwined skeleton of bones, torn parchments charred to blacks, and a black crystal in the middle, beating almost like a living heart. Then they remember what the historian warned, destroy everything inside or Elias will last forever. Elias screamed in pain, his body flickering like a dying flame as they smashed the bones and crystal. The walls of the basement closed in around them as the foundation groaned with a sort of house protesting their attempts. Father Marcus redoubled his prayers, his voice unbroken. The demon's screams became desperate pleas, his once proud form shrinking into a wisp of shadow. With one final prayer and a blow to the black crystal, the room erupted in blinding light. When the light faded, the oppressive energy was gone. The family stood in stunned silence, the basement eerily calm. The air felt lighter, almost serene. Elias was no more. After the days passed, the family began rebuilding their lives. The house that they had once dreaded to return to became like a home once more. Father Marcus assured them that the curse of Elias was gone, however, he also cautioned them to stay alert and be strong in faith. The mother continued to write in her journal, documenting their harrowing experience as testament to the power of resilience and unity. The youngest child, once the most affected, found solace in therapy, gradually reclaiming her childhood from the shadows of fear. The family decided to share their story with the world, hoping that it would be a cautionary tale for others. They warned people not to underestimate the power of evil forces and to seek help when something is unexplainable. The house itself became the stuff of local legend. People whispered of horrors committed within its walls, but the family never wanted their story to be one of despair. On the contrary, they framed it as one of triumph, a lesson on the importance of hope and faith no matter what the conditions. The family left the basement intact as they moved on with their lives, sealing it off as a reminder of their ordeal. They knew they could never forget what they had endured, but they also knew they had emerged stronger, bound by an unbreakable bond forged in the fires of terror. And though the house was now quiet, the memory lingered, a chilling reminder of the darkness that once consumed their lives. And so, the terrifying tale of the family who lived with a demon comes to an end, or does it? What you've heard is more than just a story, it's a chilling reminder of how the unseen can linger, hidden in the shadows of everyday life. Thank you for sticking with us throughout this spine-tingling ride. If you found yourself holding onto your seat or casting glances over your shoulder, let us know in the comments. Your thoughts and experiences mean everything to us. But before you go, here's your call to action. Like this video if it kept you on edge. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss our next dive into the unknown. Share this video with somebody who loves unraveling the mystery of the supernatural. This is just the beginning. The world is filled with stories that defy logic, that make you question what's real and what's not. Could something like this happen to you? Or worse, has it already happened, and you didn't even know? Until next time, keep your lights on, trust your instincts, and remember, some doors are better left unopened. Stay curious, stay cautious, and we'll see you in the next video.